Good morning. It's Saturday morning and I thought I would give another try to videoing a journal for you. So this is my most recent journal and I tried a lot of new things. So I wanted to give you an idea of what I did and how I did it. I used this amazing book cover with a Harrison Fisher illustration on it. Beautiful book cover, and a cover like this deserved a really nice closure, so I used this vintage rhinestone slide and this vintage lace that can easily be adjusted. And one of the things I try to do with journals closures is make them adjustable so that if you add things to the journal that you'll have the ability to make it a little bigger. But meanwhile, this can just slide right off of here, so you won't be adjusting it every time you use it and having to fiddle with it. But you can adjust it and make it bigger. Isn't this a gorgeous illustration? Arms and the Woman is the name of the book. And let's go inside. This first inside cover is a mixed media page that I did. I used an antique book page from another book. I trimmed it down a bit. I liked the graphics. All the pages in this book, again, have these amazing graphics on them. I try to find books like that so I can use these pages. They're so much fun to work with. So I started with this woman who was in an antique photo that I have, and I did glue her to some muslin so that she's flexible, and I glued her down, but not all the way, so it's a little more 3D. I have some vintage embroidery and vintage postage stamp from Madison Square Station, which I loved. I loved that it had Madison Square Station on it, and also poppies. For those of you who know, I love poppies. And another little piece of vintage embroidery. On top of the writing in the book page, I used a stencil with some texture paste, and the stencil was of handwriting, so I did some stenciling on here as well. I have various different kinds of pages in here. All of the floral pages are coffee dyed. This is some avocado dyed paper. Here's another lady where I used the photograph. She was actually an antique postcard, and I did blow her up a little bit. And that's some more vintage embroidery that I added. And these vintage embroidered flowers that I cut apart and then stacked on this basket. And actually the basket texture is from a book binding when I took a book apart, and I like to use these bindings. They add some great texture inside the journals as well. And then the excerpt from the end of a book, and Why Do You Love Me? Because I just liked that. I also did a little bit more texture paste in the background here, just to break up the floral a little bit, so it's kind of a swirly stencil pattern that I used the texture paste over. And more coffee dyed paper, more avocado dyed paper, another vintage photograph. I think she's another antique postcard. Some sheet music that I cut apart and actually dyed so that it would blur a little bit. But this is Art Thou My Rose. It's a little bit covered up by the fabric. And my Emily Rose stamp. I use that stamp here and there, I actually had a stamp made with that name because it was my grandmother's name, and I enjoy using it in my journals, along with some of Grandma's pictures here and there. And I did use a little bit of texture paste with that same, with the same stencil of the handwriting. I did some punching with some flowers on some of the pages in here. Some of these pages are just fun pages in general. All coffee dye here. And then I made this pocket out of a piece of antique lace. And inside is a special delivery via airmail. It looks like the postmark is 1938. Could be, I think it's 1938. Airmail to Connecticut, from Connecticut to Maine, Camden, Maine. And there's a handwritten letter inside from a man to Miss Ruth Ledbetter. And his name is Ernie, which is my great uncle's name, so I enjoy this. It's a pretty short letter, but he is missing her, it sounds like, and hurry and get your chores done soon. I love you. I must stop now. Yours forever, Ernie. He wants her to come visit, looks like. Not sure what was going on with them, but I do have another letter in here from him as well, and he's asking if she's mad at him, so not sure what was happening there, but I enjoy those letters, and I thought with all this great stamps, it just looked nice in here. A little bit more of my paper punching with the flowers. Another piece of napkin just in the corner here. So a handkerchief. Some more stamping on this beautiful piece of avocado dyed paper. I think this is another Colleen Brady. Thank you again, Colleen. And another lady that I cut out. I believe this is a digital that I found on Etsy, this lady. And I embellished the flowers that were already on her dress with some fabric flowers that I cut out of vintage handkerchiefs. And these are more flowers from a couple different handkerchiefs, I think, these flowers. I did some texture paste and another flower over here. Just a piece of wallpaper, textured wallpaper back here that I sewed on, and then added these fabric flowers and beads in the center. I also put a little bit of glitter just to embellish the centers of the flowers. A little bit on her shoe and a little bit on her belt there, just to make it pop a little bit more. And you can see the sewing on the back there. This lady I just cut out of an antique photo. I blew it up a little bit and I cut her out and just pasted her on the paper just to give it a little bit of something. Pretty roses on this paper. Corner punches. I kind of like the idea of this sheet music. Helpless. I don't know why I felt like it fit in here. Maybe the irony of it, because none of these women look helpless. And this is from avocado dyed as well, paper that I purchased actually from GT Designs on Etsy. And she's always so wonderful to send me some extra pieces. So this was included in there, as well as this crepe doily that I just was so thrilled because I thought it was just the perfect complement in this journal. And I like the way it looks against the music paper. So I just sewed it inside with the signature. And another poppy. Start incorporating those a lot. Here's more of that vintage hanky that I just glued down the center. I initially thought I would sew it in here, but then I didn't want to hide the roses with the threads, so I decided to just glue it down after I sewed everything together. The rest of that pretty doily, I tend to want to do these and fold them exactly in half so they're even on both sides, and the more I played with this, the more I realized I didn't want to do that here. I like the way it looks against the music paper on this side with it peeking through, and I just liked it better this way. So I was kind of happy that I played around a little and didn't just do my usual. More paper punching. Another antique photo, these two ladies. I just like the look of them a lot, so I added them to this page. Some more coffee dyed paper. This is, I think, echo dyed paper from Colleen again. I believe it's echo dyed. You can see I used the hidden spine, so this is a piece of fabric. When I create a hidden spine, I fuse the fabric to some tissue paper, and it's flexible, and yet the tissue paper on the back, what they call book paper, it adheres better when I glue it in. So I sew the signatures to this piece of fabric, and then I glue it into the spine, and then I glue these cover pages over that so that it makes it more sturdy. Another lady who I played with a little bit, I used some vintage embroidery with her. Some more of the pretty fabric that I actually tediously cut out of these vintage hankies. Also added a little bit of glitter to her shoes and to her straps here, and just to highlight this pretty rose in the middle. A little button and a little more of that hanky added to this piece of vintage embroidery, and just some gesso I used, and then I layered it all on top of this antique book page, Mildred's Married Life, which I kind of liked the look of that behind here and the end. I don't know why I like that, but I like that it says the end. And Mildred's married life, kind of the irony of, you know, we always think about housewives, etc., and here she's all decked out and ready to go out. So I like the contrast of the two ideas. I usually have a method to my madness, but I'm sure people don't always realize why I do what I do. This beautiful paper, I believe, is TLC Creates Vintage, I think. I love her papers, and I just have a very light stamp here, special delivery. Kind of hard to see. Here's some more of the echo dyed paper with just a little bit of a punch here. And this lovely lady is an antique postcard that I own. I love collecting antique postcards that have handwriting on the front of the postcard. I think it just adds a lot to the picture on the front. Put a little bit of lace here, and I sewed it to the page. Actually, I think I sewed it and then I glued it to the page. And I just put, excuse me, getting a little bit of a cold. I put a couple pieces of avocado dyed paper in here, and this really pretty embossed die cut. I'm sure it's antique, with the name Minnie. I just liked the way it looked in here. Complements the flowers, and I like giving people names. I'm not sure why I do that, but I like doing it. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Some more of that hanky. I think I used a lot of it up, and I really like the hanky. I'm kind of sorry to see it go. Here's the rest of the letter. This one opens here, from Miss Ruth Ledbetter, and all handwritten again. All my love forever, Ernie. I received just one letter last week, other than the one on Monday. I hope you aren't mad at me. So I'm not sure what was going on with the two of them, but I got a kick out of it. And there's not a lot in the letters except he's kind of missing her, you can tell. And I'm not sure she's missing him as much, but echo dye paper here. This lady I cut out and glued to this page, and Marie Rose, another stamp that I made, which is my mother-in-law's name. And this page I used, actually cut this off of this and made a pocket, and then added another piece of lace here, and stuck this lady in here with her flowers, and just backed her up on a piece of coffee dyed paper, a little bit of lace. She just slides right in there. You could slide pretty much anything in there. Another antique photo, and this is Anne Francis. Anna Francis was my other grandmother's name. So these are the 3 stamps that I had made just to honor their memory, and I used them in my journals here and there. Some more paper punch. And this lady, I think this is one of my favorite to play with, and she's another digital from Etsy, and I don't remember the shop name, but that's where I found her. I used that same book page, antique page with the decoration on it. I added embroidery. I added some texture paste with another, I put some ink in there so that it gave it some color. So I used a stencil and another piece of that book binding to give it some texture. This is off of another vintage hanky that I cut out there. And then there's a piece of lace in the back here to highlight her bouquet. And I, again, cut apart these embroidered flower pieces and stacked them on here. And this is a piece of fabric that I frayed on the edge, and so I could have it hanging down here. Did some gesso here, so you could write on here if you want to use this for writing, but you still can see the words peeking through. And some more punch, another vintage photo, antique photo, another piece of paper. I just put a little stamp on it. This looks more like it's an echo dyed piece, probably from Colleen. Piece of antique lace. And one other paper that I use a lot because I really love these flowers. Some more punching, some more gesso. Another postcard that I have with the writing on the front. I just think it gives it, I didn't do this, it was already this way, so the stamp and everything was already on there. So I just made a copy of it and sewed it to this page. Yeah, this one I actually sewed to the page. And another one of those embossed die cuts, and this one is Josephine. And another partial punch on this page. I'm not sure why I liked it that way, but I left it that way. I kind of liked it the way it was without doing the whole side of it. I just like to be different. This is one more page where I used some texture paste, some vintage embroidery. The chapter 2, this is from that same antique book, but it had this around the chapter, so most of the page was blank. And then where the flowers and the words here are from another book page, I made a copy of it a little smaller and glued it on. And then I glued on this lady. I made these little flowers out of that same handkerchief. I just twisted them around and added them to the photo. Kind of enjoying, and I did a lot of stenciling with my inks. I liked the colors, so I made sure I used similar colors to highlight the colors in these flowers and the green in the chapter 2. So I kind of like the idea that I have chapter 2, I have the end. I just kind of enjoyed a lot of what I did in this book, and I really love this. I really love this the rhinestone. So I really liked the way it went with the hat. So sometimes I kind of hoard these and I don't want to put them on a book because I like them so much, but this one was just, to me, just made the cover. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope I explained well enough, and I hope this setup with the camera worked for you and wasn't shaking too much. I'll check it and I may redo it if I don't like the way it came out. Thanks for watching.